Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of Spill the Tea with Tommy D. This week we are going to do matcha. Matcha is a very popular thing right now because of the health benefits, so we're going to talk about it. I picked up this matcha from a company called theteaspot, and so matcha, if you don't remember, I briefly mentioned it on our sencha episode. What matcha is they take the sencha green tea leaves and they use stones and they hand grind it into a fine powder. Now, originally when tea was discovered in China, this was actually the original way of drinking tea, is they would drink it in powdered form, they would ingest the full tea leaf. Eventually the Chinese, for the most part, abandoned that for the more modern infusion way of drinking tea that we've been doing, but the Japanese adopted the powder form, and it's a ceremonial way of drinking sencha tea. So I'm gonna smell a little bit here. So I'll post a picture on what it looks like. It smells very vegetal, just like the sencha. This one's a little toasty actually. It smells really, really good. Now you don't want to smell matcha, like when you smell it, you gotta really just kind of waft it and smell it, because if you sniff too hard, it's a very fine powder, and it'll go right up your nose. And while it does have a lot of caffeine, it's not going to really be like anything you'd find in the 80s, if you know what I mean. So yes, matcha has... Why people love matcha so much is because it's very, very rich in nutrients. So because you're ingesting the full tea leaf instead of just the infusion, you're getting a lot of antioxidants and all that nutritional benefits. You're also getting a pretty hefty amount of caffeine. So I don't know the exact amount, but it is well over the amount of a cup of coffee. Now the only difference is, as all tea leaves have the L-theanine in the tea leaves. So if you drink a cup of matcha, you're not going to really, yes, you're getting a lot of caffeine, but it's not going to jack you up as much as you'd expect, because the L-theanine promotes relaxation. So I always kind of viewed it as, it's like, it literally makes you feel like you got the best night's sleep ever and you're ready for the day. So I've always really enjoyed it. So there's a few different ways you can drink matcha. Some people will do it iced. What you can do is you kind of put it in like a martini shaker and you can shake it up with some milk or whatever. Or some people put it in smoothies, because the taste, it's that vegetal kind of grassy taste. What I'm doing right now is we're going to do the traditional method of whisking and preparing a cup of matcha. So what I'm doing right now, traditionally, it is done with a bamboo whisk. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just adding a little hot water to the whisk to kind of soften up the bristles, because if you don't do that, you can potentially break the bristles off your whisk. Eventually that will happen, but you want to try and prevent that. More modern way is you can get a fancy, like, milk frother. Jeez, that is powerful. You can get a milk frother and mix it in that way. It's a little faster. Some people prefer it, but I'm going to do the traditional way for you. So what I did is I have a matcha bowl here, and I put 1 teaspoon of matcha. Matcha, you can do thick matcha or thin matcha, and it's just based on the concentration you like. You can have play with this, but you got to be careful, because if you use too much, it's going to be pretty bitter. The other thing is there are different grades of matcha. This is a ceremonial grade, which means it is ground very fine. The other grade is you can get a cooking matcha, which is a little more clumpy, because you can make delicious cookies with matcha. There's a lot of things you could do with it. Now, because it's a green tea, we're going to do like a 175. So what I'm going to do is, because the bowl doesn't hold a ton of water, I'm just doing 8 ounces of water with 1 ice cube in this little pitcher here, so that way I can cool down the water so I don't burn the matcha. Now, once the tea leaves are nice, there's no tea leaves, I'm sorry, once the bamboo whisk is nice and soft, you can kind of just not worry about that. This is what the whisk looks like. They're not very expensive. You can actually get a whole kit for matcha pretty easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the hot water. We have our powder of the matcha right in the bowl. We're going to pour, I like to pour just a little bit of hot water, and then what you want to do is you want to start breaking up some of those clumps, and you can just kind of make almost like a paste. Once they're done, pretty easy to break them up. And then you can just go ahead and add the rest of your hot water. Now, again, you swirl it a little bit just to kind of break up those clumps. And then the goal of whisking matcha is to get kind of like a foam on top, like a little froth going, which is why the milk frother works really good. So what you do is you start just kind of going side to side with it. You're going to get a little going. Go to side, and then eventually, as you go side to side with it, as you slowly, you don't want to push down on the bottom of the bowl too, because you'll break the bristles that way. As you start to see a foam, then you start going in kind of like a zigzag formation. And you want to use your wrist instead of like your whole arm just to get it a little quicker. And so you just kind of like going back and forth, up and down the bowl, getting a nice zigzag going. Now, because there's no steep time, I'm not going to talk too much crap today. It's, you know, this is just the way it is. That's why this is a special episode. I'm actually doing this, as I mentioned last week, because a buddy of mine that I used to sell tea to asked me to do a matcha episode. So we have a nice frothy foam there. Just kind of keep working it until eventually you get a good foam. Now, I don't know if you can see it there, but I will pour it into a mug. I spilled a little bit. It happens. And this bowl, just pour a little bit there. There we go. Okay. Now this is just 8 ounces of it, so you can see that little bit of foam there. And then I'm actually going to add, so this would actually be, typically you do 1 teaspoon per 16 ounces of water for a cup of matcha, is kind of how I like to do it, because again, it can be a little harsh. So while this more water cools down, I'm just going to smell it. So again, it is very fresh and vegetal. It is made from the sencha leaves. The other thing that's really interesting about the matcha, the one difference they use between a regular sencha and the sencha that they use for matcha, is they actually use shade, they call it shade growing. So the last 2 weeks before the leaves are picked, they put these bamboo shades over it. And what that does is it forces the tea leaves to boost their photosynthesis, and it creates a darker sencha, and it's also much more rich in nutrients. So they kind of like really boost their photosynthesis up, so that way they get all those extra nutrients, and that is one of the great aspects of matcha. Alright, I'm going to top this off. A little hot water. Keeps that little foam on top too. And then, so it's really nice. It's very like dark emerald green. And again, the tea leaves are ground up. The powder is literally in the tea right here, as opposed to, that's why it's not clear like when we do our regular infusions. So, smell. Very vegetal, fresh. It's very good. I have to say, I've gotten matcha from many, many different companies. There's it's a wide range of things across the board. This is very, very good matcha. The good thing too about you don't want to use too much hot water, because if you leave this for too long, it will start to settle. So it is good to kind of scarf it down pretty nice. But clearly, for the teaspot, this ceremonial grade matcha, they definitely use a very high quality tea. I honestly couldn't recommend it more. It is a very, very tasty matcha. It's very good. Very good. It's really good for mental alertness, weight loss. It's got a slew of health benefits that you could look up. So if you're interested in picking up some matcha, my current recommendation for matcha is the teaspot. But if there's a local tea store to you, or there's a tea store that you've been kind of ordering from, it's pretty much a staple for most tea shops to have a cup of matcha. And that's it. It's going to be a quick episode today, and after that I will get back. I have 2 more teas. I have a nice Dragon Well, which is a Chinese green tea, but I'm going to break it up. We've been doing a lot of pure teas, and I know people like to learn about the flavors, so I have like a coconut oolong coming at you for next episode. So, until next time,